reality, the greatest entrepreneurs, it's not that they envisioned the future and built a product for it, it's that they relentlessly pursued change.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship 101. Tonight, we had a very special opportunity to invite Brant Cooper, the author of The Lean Entrepreneur and a celebrated entrepreneur, to speak to us tonight. To introduce Brant, I would like to welcome Sarah Catiel, who is the program manager of Jolt. She will explain a little bit about Jolt and her work there and introduce Brant. So with warm welcomes to Sarah and Brant.
Hi everyone, welcome to Entrepreneurship 101, and to all the webcasters, welcome to Entrepreneurship 101. I'm Sarah Catiel. Some of you may know me. I work upstairs with the Jolt Accelerator. Now the Jolt Accelerator is a 4-month immersive, mentorship-driven technology accelerator based out of the Mars Commons. We invest in about 6 to 8 startup companies, mentor them, provide program, workshops, speakers, to get these companies ready for something that's big called the Demo Day. So you may have heard something like this through Y Combinator and Techstars up in the States, and so we try to emulate that upstairs. Today, we actually launched our second winter cohort. So go online, go tweet about it, check out our 6 new startups that we've launched. I'm happy to talk to anybody that's interested about Jolt. We'll be recruiting for our 3rd cohort later in May and June. So while we were trying to build this program and the workshops and the speakers, I was looking for the ultimate expert in customer insights, the lean methodology, and so forth. And so I asked around. I talked to actually Ash Moria, and I said, who should I call upon? And he actually emailed me a name, and he said, Brant Cooper. And I said, okay, let me look this person up. And I did some more research, and I was amazed. And luckily, Brant is here speaking with Grow Talks tomorrow, and he's actually going to be spending some time with our Jolt startups on Friday. And we extended the invite to come and speak for Entrepreneurship 101. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Brant Cooper, who is the author of The Lean Entrepreneur, which will be out on Amazon and bookstores online on February 26th. And I'll let you do the rest because I know you're really good at this. So please welcome Brant.
Thank you. Thanks. So good evening, Toronto. Nothing like a cool evening walk in the snow for a guy from San Diego. But I actually, I don't ever complain about the weather when I travel because I get to go home to San Diego. So anyway, I've got a new book out, Lean Entrepreneur. I'll talk about that a little bit. But a couple of years ago, I wrote a book called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development. Has anybody heard of this book? Has anybody heard of Steve Blank's 4 Steps to the Epiphany? So more people have heard of this book. So mine is sort of the cheat sheet to Steve Blank's book. Steve Blank's is a thick book. It's actually a compilation of lecture notes. It's not really a purpose-written book. So with Steve's cooperation, my co-author, Patrick Vlaskovitz, and I wrote this cheat sheet. And really, it was the first book that talked about some of Eric Ries's principles, the lean startup stuff, Dave McClure's pirate metrics, the concept of product market fit, some of our own concepts. But basically, we sold about 20,000 copies. So then we have publishers knocking on our door. The thing about publishers is they don't really like tactical books like that. They really like you to write what I call the airport business book. So I'm thinking, how could I write an airport business book? What could be my sort of theme? What could I do to come and talk to audiences, especially those outside of Silicon Valley, and get them fired up? Get that entrepreneurial spirit really juiced. So I sort of believe it's my purpose in life to come and talk to organizations like this one and all of you here, and talked about how you are a visionary. You owe it to the world to take your ideas, build them, release them to the public. It's unfair if people do not get to experience the ideas that you have locked up in your brain. You must believe in yourself. You must have convictions about your idea. You must have faith in your startup endeavor. So that's what I pitched. But actually, I just couldn't do that. Because you're not a visionary. So this is our friend Mark, circa 2005. He's moved to Palo Alto from Boston. He's being interviewed. He's actually kind of awkward. He's wearing this T-shirt. He's holding a beer. Should I put this down? What should I do with the beer? He's wearing the shorts, I think, seem to me, at circa 1983. And so the interviewer asks him, "What's your vision for Facebook?" And Mark says, "Yeah, some people want to conquer the world. I just really hope to build a really cool college directory." So I ask you, when did Mark become a visionary? He became a visionary after he became a billionaire. He was anointed a visionary. So I always urge my audiences, if you have visionary in your LinkedIn bio and you're not a billionaire, please remove it. So we have this thing called the myth of the visionary. Are these guys visionaries? Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford? I'm going to argue that they're not visionaries. Ross Perot talked about his investment into Next, right? Oh, Steve Jobs, he was too poor to go to college. He was in a garage playing around with circuit boards, and he invented the Apple I. And he changed the world. And Ross Perot was all bummed out because he missed out on the Apple, and he had missed out on Bill Gates. He goes, so I'm going to invest in Steve Jobs and Next. We all know what happened to Next, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars down the drain. No value created for anybody. Ross Perot lost his money. So the idea of this visionary, that somebody that I can foresee the future, and I imagine a product that exists in this future, and therefore I must build it, it's false. Thomas Edison actually was a brilliant PR person. He had media would come into his offices, and he would go pose at the window. The media person, his PR person, shh, he's thinking of the future. This really happened. And he would say, I look to the future for my ideas. But actually what he did is he literally combed patent archives and tried to combine things in a new way. Henry Ford, you know what his vision was? Farm equipment. Because he was growing up on a farm and he hated farm work. So he was going to build tractors. He sort of stumbled into automobiles, which of course were already being built. And what's interesting, he's known for saying, you can have a car any color as long as it's black. This was his vision, right? I'm going to build one car for everybody. And that enabled him to put together this assembly line, which was actually very lean. It was really, in my view, the predecessor to lean manufacturing, which I'll talk about in a bit. And the volume that he was creating was efficient because the demand was just pulling these. He had product market fit, right? Product market fit is not you pushing the product out to the market anymore. It's it's the market pulling the product out of you. And that's what he had. So he had all of these specialization of trade, right? Everybody's working on their little cells, churning them out as fast as possible, and the market's just pulling these cars as fast as possible. After a few years, though, competition picked up on the fact that not everybody wanted a black car. And so GM started offering different colors, different financing options, started to doing what we call sustaining innovation, right? Incremental improvements to the product. And Ford's market share started dipping. And so this vision actually became an albatross. So engineers would write these, flowery letters to, "Dear esteemed Mr. Ford, we would wish that you would consider including this new clutch that we've developed because the performance is far superior. Henry Ford would read this, and he would go to where that engineer worked and would fire him on the spot. This is conviction, people, right? This is conviction as market share drops. So in reality, the greatest entrepreneurs, it's not that they envisioned the future and built a product for it. It's that they relentlessly pursued change. And that's actually what a true visionary is you don't let things get in your way. You hire great people, and you relentlessly pursue the change that you want to see in the world. And that could be a small change. It could be you becoming more innovative or helping an existing business become more innovative. Or it could be that you want to do a startup that's going to change the world. Or maybe it's making a small change. But the vision is like a lighthouse. You rally the team about going towards this lighthouse, but the reality on the ground, you have to listen to the reality on the ground, and your vision will change. Almost all startups that we know and love started out as something different than what they became. Palm Pilot, micro payments on the Palm Pilot. YouTube actually started out as a dating site. Does anybody know that? You can go to the Wayback Machine, pull up a screen that says, I'm a man/woman looking for man/woman, upload video. So we really want to flip this myth of the visionary on the head. It's not about foreseeing the future. It's about relentless pursuit of change. And I think it's empowering, right? I think the myth of the visionary has two fundamental problems. Number one is people sit back and go, oh, I'm not a visionary. Therefore, I can't make change. Therefore, I must work in my business, in my silo, do what I'm told, input box, output box, even if that's not who they are in spirit. That's number one. And the second problem are the people that self-declare themselves. I'm a visionary. I have faith in my idea. I have conviction about what I'm going to build. So I'm going to sit down and build it. I'm not going to talk to customers. I don't care what my investors say. It's all between the ears. I'm going to sit down and build it. And they build, and they build, and they build. And they release it to the market. They hire their field sales and B2B. This happened all through the 2000s. I was in a couple of these. You hired your field salespeople. You hire your marketing people, your PR people, your big launch. Crickets. And you don't know why. You've done no learning. So this is really where the lean startup comes out of. It's trying to change this method of doing innovation. So what we have, we believe, sort of our surf metaphor here, we've got big changes going on. A lot of the factory jobs that we lost aren't coming back. Structural changes to the economy. Everybody's got a computer in their pocket, right? Globally connected. A freelance economy coming up. Crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, changing how businesses get started. So radical change going on. It breeds uncertainty, volatility even, but also opportunity. And so, in our view, the way to be successful is to be agile, fast, use data to inform decisions, not make decisions, but inform decisions. And so, the old school way back in the barrel that's going to be crushed by the wave is the culture around you, right? I travel internationally and I hear it all the time. Oh, we just don't have a culture that accepts failure. Well, I mean, that just has to start with you. I don't know why it is that we're in the scientific community, when we're doing engineering, we run experiments. Most experiments fail. But each experiment instructs the next experiment. So we are willing to fail. We're all willing to fail. We do it all the time in science. So why not when we're actually trying to figure out if it's the right product? Or why not when we're doing marketing? Why not when we're doing sales? Run experiments, hypothesize, run experiments, iterate. That's what the lean startup is. Business plans out the door. Canada VCs still require business plans? No? Progress. Yes, it's all about the business model. You're not going to get funded these days based on an idea. You actually have to prove your business. It's actually the way it should be. so inexpensive now to get your idea off the ground. That's an experiment in itself. Prove that you can do it. Prove that you can figure out parts of your business model. Then if you go to raise money, if you need to raise money, you actually get to keep more of your company. It's a win-win. Old school startup and the lean startup. So let me take a step back and briefly describe where the lean in the term lean startup comes from. Lean does not mean cheap. It doesn't mean skinny. It doesn't mean don't raise money. It doesn't mean don't spend money. Lean comes from lean manufacturing, which describes the way Toyota built cars in Japan in the 50s. It's about the elimination of waste. So you have what we call value-add activities. Say you're assembling the parts of a car, maybe a minivan for a known customer, maybe a soccer mom. You're actually assembling parts of the car. That's a value-add activity. Lean wants to make those activities as efficient as possible. You also have non-value-add activities. This may be forklifting parts from one side of the warehouse to the other. Doesn't actually contribute to the value that you're creating. Some are necessary. You want to eliminate as many as possible. But you must maintain the value. This is critical, right? So some people criticize American automobile manufacturers. They go over to Japan. They study this lean manufacturing. And their conclusion is, oh, we need more robots. So they come back to the States, implement a bunch of robots, fire a bunch of workers, increase productivity, increased efficiency. Maybe the stock price goes up. That's all fine and good. Actually, I mean, maybe that's what they wanted to do. It's just not lean. Lean is about the creation of the value in this efficient way by eliminating waste. So the difference between lean manufacturing and lean startup is, if you buy into my myth of the visionary, is that in a startup or any sort of endeavor filled with uncertainty, any sort of innovative, disruptive innovation that you're trying to do, even inside of a large organization, you actually don't know the value that you're creating. And you don't know for whom. You think you know, right? You put together a deck that says that you know, or a business plan that says that you know, but you don't really know. You don't know until a market has spoken, right? Until a transaction happens in the marketplace, you're guessing. You're full of assumptions. So the lean startup then, the idea is to eliminate waste in the discovery of value and the discovery for whom you're creating that value. So how do you do that? Sort of begs the question. If you actually don't know the value that you're creating, how do you know which activities are wasteful and which are not wasteful? Well, that's why Eric Ries talks about the concept of validated learning. So it all comes down to, if you're not learning, then you're wasting. But another key concept is, once you've learned, now you execute, right? So the whole idea is learning, iterative learning processes in order to validate your assumptions. Once they've been validated, now you start executing them. And this causes actually all sorts of other dilemmas inside of young businesses. The people that actually do the execution are often not the people that want to do the learning. Right? I'll talk about that more in a little bit. So how do you build stuff that people actually want, that they desire, that they need? So the lean startup, we talk about 3 things. Interacting with your customers, building viability experiments, and using data to help inform decisions. And we believe it's the winners that are able to combine these things in creating new value, that are taking opportunities that are presented by this transformation in technology that we're living through and creating new value. And so I love this story. To me, it's a great example. So Scott Summit founded this company, Bespoke Innovations, because of 2 passions. One was prosthetics, and the other was 3D printing, digital fabrication. So he always looked at people that were wearing artificial limbs and thought, that is an engineering solution to a design problem. They're mass manufactured, one size fits all, and it has nothing to do with the individual. So this woman, after she lost her leg, she had a mass-manufactured artificial limb that she hid from the world. She wore long skirts or she wore slacks always. She would actually stuff socks down into the prosthetic in order to give her leg the shape of a calf. It always felt wrong. She was always conscious of it. It wasn't part of her. So Scott got this ingenious idea. He took a 3D scanner and scanned her good leg, and using 3D printing, printed out a mirror opposite. But then he did more than that. He actually integrated this woman into the process. He interviewed her in depth to learn who she was, and he would come up with design aesthetics, and she participated in this, sort of like a tattoo artist, right? It's customized. She now actually buys clothing to match her prosthesis. She shows it off. It's life-changing. This is real value being created. And it's done at the same cost as the mass manufacturing. Scott doesn't have any inventory, though. He's got a plan on a computer. And his product line is based upon who walks in the door. A woman walks into a door and she's got a degenerative neck disease. She can't hold her head up. Walks out the same day or the next day with a custom-built brace so she can hold her head up. It's really extraordinary stuff. So, a great viability test example here. Lucas Carlson of AppFog. So most people are probably aware of using landing pages to test whether your idea's got any legs. Popularized actually by Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Workweek, but also fundamental part of early lean startup stuff. But so Lucas, he's a guy who does a bunch of projects, right? He loves projects. He's always building stuff, hangs out on Hacker News. Bunch of people in Hacker News talking about the need for cloud services for people who program in the programming language PHP. And he goes, okay, I'm going to build this. It's late one Friday night. I'm going to build it. His wife's saying, come to bed. It's late. So he goes, okay, I'll just put up a one-page website, tell everybody what I'm building. Big button on there says, join my beta program. Post that on Hacker News. Goes to bed. Wakes up the next day, 800 people are signed up. And he's the type of guy, he discusses this when we interviewed him, he likes to throw the ball, the way he put it, he's like, I like to throw the ball down the field because I have to go after it, right? So he sets himself up, and in this case, he set himself up by 800 people are depending on him. He's actually made a promise to join a beta program that doesn't exist. So he starts coding. Coding, I'm going to build this rock-solid platform. It's got to kick butt. All these people love my idea. I can't let them down. Builds. Week go by, 2 weeks go by. 4 weeks into it, he says it's going to take me 6 months, at least, to finish this product if I keep going the way I'm going. And, oh, by the way, 4,000 people are now signed up. So I love this next move, and this wasn't in any book. He just made this up. I call this a high hurdle experiment. He didn't believe that those 4,000 people were actual customers. I mean, if you think about it, an email address is really not that great of a currency. Yeah, people have secondary, they use their Yahoo account or their Hotmail account in order to sign up. So maybe they're interested. So he didn't believe it, right? There's a bunch of people in Silicon Valley now that run to their investors and say, I've got 4,000 people signed up to join my beta program. Now are you ready to give me money? It's just really not, it doesn't really prove it. It's a nice idea. It tells you to go forward, right? If nobody signed up, maybe you wouldn't go forward. But it doesn't tell you that you've got a winning business. Not yet. But so what he did is he wasn't going to believe it. So he said, well, what's a high hurdle experiment? How can I make them jump through hoops? So sort of exactly opposite of what we think of doing, right? 4,000 people, we want to make them all happy. He was all like, nope, I want 24 out of those 4,000. So I'm going to make them jump through hoops. I'm going to make them fill out a monster survey. I'm going to break all marketing best practices. Not 9 questions with radio buttons and check boxes, and they can finish it in 9 seconds, but 9 pages, open-ended questions. What is the meaning of life? Why are you here? What's your favorite color? Anything to get these people not to fill out the survey. You guys already can guess the conclusion. 2,000 people filled out that survey. 2,000. He read every one of them. He did data mining on them. And what I think is also extraordinary is what he found out was this rock-solid platform that he was building was wrong. And what's interesting about it is he was a customer, right? So I believe that solving your own problem is not a bad way to start. It really isn't. It's likely that there are other people that have the same problem. But again, if you just rely on that, you're building on these assumptions. And what he figured out was there were 3 or 4 features that he could build that would be enough to provide value such that people will sign up and pay for this application while he's, strengthening the product. This is the minimum viable product, right? For some constituencies, for some problems that are being solved, it doesn't have to be a rock-solid product. It has to be just enough that it's providing just enough value that people will sign up and pay while you clean it up. So within a week, he had built these 3 or 4 features, the back end just to support those 3 or 4 features. Rocket ship. Raised $10 million, exponential growth, just crushed it. Now, it certainly doesn't guarantee that if you do a landing page, you're going to have that experience. But think about the lessons in there, right? He had his market segmented well. He knew where they hanged out, right? Where they hung out. Hacker News, people like him. Ran a viability test, put up a landing page, got people to say that they were interested. Doubled down on that, actually tried to weed them out. Who's the most passionate of these people? Who are the early adopters? And then finally, discovering what's the minimum that needs to be built to get it out so people can start giving valued feedback based on you providing value to them, right? It's not based upon having a conversation. What do you think of my idea, right? I mean, that's just crap. This is actually they're getting value, and they're going to start pulling it out because now they're going to take you exactly where you need to go. Once they've discovered and are using the value, now you want to follow them. So another company, this one in San Francisco, have you heard of Beta Brands? The key to Beta Brands is in their name, Beta Brands. This is an online clothing manufacturer, not an online version of an offline catalog. Everything they do is online. No, they do not release clothes at the spring fashion shows in Paris and New York. They go and they discover existing market segments. They already live online, offline, and they make clothes for those market segments. Genius. Turns out there's people that bike to work. Anybody bike to work here? Yeah, it's too cold. Yeah, it's better than walking to work. So communities exist, though, of people that bike to work, right? Blogs. People probably gather offline or maybe ride bikes offline other than biking to work. You know where to go and find people that also bike to work. This is true all across the United States, Canada, I'm sure as well. People who love to bike to work. So Beta Brands decides they're going to make pants for people who bike to work. Pull out this little flag is reflective, flip up cuffs, reflective, safer to ride to work, get to work, put the flag back in, fold down the cuffs, looks like you're wearing slacks. They make 100 of them, maybe 200. Reach out to the community. Community loved it. Blogged about it, wrote about it, shared it, bought these slacks, sold out instantaneously. Now they've got a whole line of apparel for people who bike to work. They thought they would do the same thing with foodies. So foodies exist, right? Community exists. They're pretty easy to find. Let's make a garlic t-shirt, and it'll ship the same day as the garlic festival. Wah, 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 wah. Not such a great idea. People didn't really blog about it. They got rid of all 100 or 200. But the point is that they didn't lose any money, really, right? They only did a small production. They didn't just sit there and launch some big line of apparel. They come out with a new pair of clothing, a new clothing once or twice a week. Everybody in the company, from the receptionist to the CEO, comes up with ideas. Let's build X for the Y community. So the whole culture of that company is just built on ideas and testing, ideas, testing, validating, scaling. They also raised a bunch of money. Levi's actually started copying them. So they've got other innovations that they've got, sort of down the road. So again, this is, I don't know why that slide's there, Lean Entrepreneur. So I want to talk real quickly about the innovation spectrum. So if you have anybody heard of Fake Grimlock? You should follow him on Twitter. He actually did the art for our book. Really creative. We love the drawings. They actually tell a story, right? So Clayton Christensen wrote The Innovator's Dilemma. I recommend that book to everybody. Coined the terms sustaining technology and disruptive technology. We talk about innovation because innovation happens not only with technology, right? Sustaining innovation is what big businesses do well. Big businesses typically started doing something disruptive. As their market grows, they become sustaining. There's nothing wrong with being sustaining. You're a big business that's doing sustaining. It's because you probably dominate that market. You've got great margins. You're totally crushing it. There are other problems, but the problem of sustaining itself, everybody that starts disruptive wants to get over there. That's where all the money is. Known products, known problem, known solution. You can talk to your customers. You can believe what they say. You can even ask them questions like, will you pay $20? So in the book, Christensen uses the example of hard drives because there was tons of data on hard drives. You have a 5 1/4-inch drive back in the 90s or 2000s. Guess it was 2000s, 90s. 5 1/4 drive, 10 megabytes, right? Real innovation, not fake innovation, but real innovation, new processes, new techniques, new materials, double the capacity. 20 megabyte hard drive, same form factor. You go to the IT guy, hey, do you want my new hard drive? It doubles the capacity. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you didn't even need to ask. Where do I sign the PO? You know the market. You can predict it. You can actually do return on investment calculation. If you write a business plan, you can draw the chart accurately. Sustaining business. Disruptive business, brand new. Market turned on its head. Market is unknown. Startups were creating 3.5-inch drives before they had an application for 3.5-inch drives. You took that 3.5-inch drive to the same customer over here, that IT guy. Hey, 20 megabyte hard drive, and check out the size of this. The guy's like, what is that, a paperweight? He has no use for it. There's no application for it. How much would you pay for it? Oh, I wouldn't pay anything for it. 6 months later, they come with a laptop, and it's got that hard drive in it. He's going to buy that, right? And then he needs to buy the replacement drives. Over here, market is unknown. You talk to your customer, you can't believe what they say. You can't ask them questions like, what do you think of my idea? Would you buy this? How much would you pay? They don't know. Customer only understands their own domain. So you've probably had this experience, right? This is why Steve Jobs and Mark Cuban like to say, oh, I never ask my customers because they don't know shit. You can't ask them anything, right? Even though I love to point out that Steve Jobs' very first customer was a guy that told him exactly what to build. Steve Jobs had all of his circuit board and all of these components to it. And the guy goes, no, you put it together. I'm not buying it until you put it together. Then I'll buy 20 or 50 or whatever he said. So over here, you have to find your early adopters. Once you find your early adopters, you sort of are stepping off this endpoint, and you have a group of people that understand the problem that you're trying to solve. They're going, now I see what you're doing. Yeah, I'm kind of looking for that solution too. And you actually then have people that you can work with in order to figure out that you're building the right product. Most startups actually don't live over here. Most startups are somewhere in between. So Steve Blank talks about resegmented market, low cost. So you've got some innovation that drives down the cost, and you can sell it maybe to a market that was underserved before because they couldn't afford it. Or resegmenting new functionality that solves the problems of a specific niche market better than the other products. That's actually where most startups live. There's even more startups doing sustaining innovation these days. So when you hear the media, I don't know if it happens that much in Canada, it's all over in the US, VCs in the media whining about Me Too companies, Me Too startups, products not features, or features not products, no innovation, blah, blah, blah. It's because they're looking at the companies that are doing sustaining innovation. To the founders, if you're actually doing high quality sustaining innovation, you're a great acquisition target. Somebody comes in and buys you for $10 or $20 million, that's life-changing. So from the founder perspective, that's all good. Maybe you put more money into a more disruptive endeavor the next time, or you become an angel investor and put money back in the ecosystem. So that's all good. The point really is that the methods and the processes that you use in your business differ when you're on the disruptive side versus the sustaining side. So you have to be way more clever about how you interact with your customers over here. You want to figure out if you can run tests that will prove what a customer will do rather than what they say they'll do. Existing product management processes over here are pretty darn good. Go gather features, right? Over here, you're running experiments to prove viability. Over here, you're running experiments to optimize. So what's the color of your buy button? You know, if you actually have tons of customers and you change the color of your buy button and it increases a fraction of a percentage, that could represent millions of dollars. Over here, if you're worried about that stuff, you're wasting your time. It's not going to move the needle of your organization. Over here, your employees are people that execute a known roadmap. They want the processes. You hire entrepreneurs over here, they're bad employees. How many bad employees are there here? I'm a bad employee. That's why people become entrepreneurs. It's even hard to keep a job because you're a bad employee. Over here, this is where the entrepreneurs live. If you hire people that love structure, I did this in one of my startups. I hired a guy that came from Cisco, and he was used to working in a silo, and he was trying to work in this startup. Failure. So you have to keep those type of things in mind when you're trying to grow the company. And I'll just say lastly that on this topic, that the innovator's dilemma is that business managers are making rational decisions to invest in products where a return is known. It makes sense. I've got a budget. I've got somebody comes up to me and says, listen, we've got a new product. It's sustaining innovation, but we're going to be able to sell it to the same customers. We're going to be able to sell it for this much money. We're going to make this much money. And then there's some other clown over here that's going, oh, I got this great idea. Give me $10 million and it'll totally disrupt the industry. I mean, who are you going to give your money to, right? The problem is that if you continue to do just sustaining innovation, and there's a startup over there that's maybe going to steal away your market. Maybe it's 10 years away. Maybe it's 5 years away. But so where we try to help companies is, can we help them figure out how you do lean startups inside your organization and keep them safe from the core business, as well as keeping the core business safe from the startup. Core business actually has to protect those employees that should not be working in that startup. Core business has to protect their sales staff, right? So what happens in some big companies is there's some funky new product and they say, okay, Salesforce, go sell this. And they're like, listen, I need to make my commission. I'm not going to make it selling this piece of crap. So they just bundle it in, or they sell that, and earn a spiff, and they bundle in their other core product. So you're not finding whether or not you're providing any value there, whether there's a real product line there. Same thing with brand, right? You can't just release to the market this unproven product because somebody thinks it's a great idea. So you actually have to protect the core business also from the startup. So here's another picture. We emphasize market segmentation. It's really great when I have my co-author Patrick here for these slides because this guy actually kind of looks like Patrick. But so this is the guy that wants to be all things to all people, right? He's got all of the latest gear, all of the latest equipment. He's dangling lines for every type of fish out there, and he's not going to catch anything. Maybe he'll catch a few opportunistically. Maybe if he's actually got rock-solid salespeople, he'll land one of each. And if he lands one of each, he's in huge trouble because they will all pull him in different directions. How are you going to reel them in? If you actually get them on the boat, you're not going to be able to carve them up and eat them. Over this side, this guy's focused. This is one of the hardest lessons for entrepreneurs. You have to focus on a narrow, well-defined market segment. It doesn't mean you won't go after these other market segments down the road. That is how you grow. But you have to focus on nailing a core value proposition for a well-defined market segment. That's how you get launched. And then you take on another narrowly defined market segment. And after you win a few of these market segments and your reputation, your brand starts to precede you, now you'll start seeing growth happen organically. But until you've nailed that core value prop, you're literally just fishing. And so it's better to do it process-oriented than just opportunistically. Now, when it comes to defining market segments, it's not about demographics. Firmographics can play a role, but it's actually the way to classify people rather than grouping people that will buy a product. People buy a product because it's solving a problem or it's addressing a passion that they have. So you have to segment that way. So a market segment are people that share the same pain or passion and speak the same language. And by speak the same language, I mean that they'll look to each other to refer to solutions. So if you're selling square hats, you sell to blockheads. You don't sell to people who are 50 to 70. It makes no sense. Yet it's still sort of ingrained in us, and it's taught, actually, all about demographics. Has anybody heard of Clayton Christensen's Jobs to be Done model? He's got a great example of this. This is sort of sustaining innovation. But the idea is that a job or a product is performing a job. You need to know what that job is. And that job differs for different market segments. So there was a fast food restaurant who wanted to increase the sales of its milkshakes, hired a traditional market research firm. They did survey. Oh, how do you like our milkshakes? What would you like improved? And people said, oh, make them thicker, make them thinner, make them sweeter, make them low fat. So they implemented a couple of these ideas and didn't move the needle. Nothing really happened. Hired Christensen's firm, and the first thing they did, and this is a form of customer interaction, is they went to the store, to the fast food restaurants, sat down and watched. Watched people buy milkshakes all day long, looking for a pattern. What they found was that for some reason, people that were pretty well dressed, business suits, dress casual, were buying milkshakes at 8 o'clock in the morning. Why the heck are well-dressed people buying milkshakes at 8 o'clock in the morning? That's nuts. Yeah, well. So the second part of customer interaction is, don't get scared by this. You ask them. Yes, you can actually talk to your customers. So they talk to them. Why are you buying a milkshake? It turned out the pattern was that these people were just starting their commute to work. They were going to go sit in a car for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, sit in traffic. And all of these other choices that they had didn't satisfy the problem of boredom. Coffee went too quickly or it spilled, and bananas, no, it just didn't do it. It was done too quick. Milkshakes were thick. You're sucking them through a straw. So the company actually made the milkshakes even thicker and then added chunks of fruit to the bottom, so that the fruit would get stuck in the straw and you have to sit there and stir it and swirl it. And supposedly, the story goes, they increased the sales. So the the milkshakes were being hired for was to relieve boredom. How would you know that other than, and matter of fact, it's not like the customers really knew it, right? So that was the way we described, or Christensen described the problem. It's not like the customer was saying, oh, I'm bored. No, I mean, you put a label on it. It's like, oh, yeah, this is what they're doing. They're playing with the milkshake for 30 minutes. So the whole idea around this customer interaction is not asking the customer what they want and then doing what they say. You can ask them what they want, right? So there's the other famous Henry Ford quote about if you ask them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Turns out Henry Ford didn't say that, but the question's still relevant. But I think even Steve Jobs, at the end of the bio that Isaacson did, which is just an extraordinary book. I love that book. Steve Jobs actually uses that quote to justify why he doesn't talk to customers, and it's really, people, it's just BS. It isn't in asking the question, it's in what you do with the answer, right? So if a customer said, oh yeah, I want a faster buggy or a faster horse, then what does a sustaining innovator do? Maybe they improve the wheels on the buggy and it actually moves faster. What does a disruptive innovator do? I don't know, let's forget about the horse, let's build a car, right? So you're understanding the needs, but it doesn't mean that you're doing what they say. The way I like to put it is customer owns the pain, founder owns the vision. So you're not asking your customer how to solve the problem. That's up to you. And then you validate it, right? Then you run experiments and see if you can validate whether you're on the right path. And again, you find the more disruptive side you're on, you find these early adopters because you can actually have real in-depth conversations and again, understand, believe what they have to say. So this is way too complicated to go through, and I'd actually like to get to questions, but this is inside the book. Basically, it's a way to map your assumptions. I've identified sort of 7 steps that a customer goes through from being aware to being passionate. The key takeaway here is that you focus on minimum viable product, on hopeful, satisfied, and passionate before you care about conversion, funnel, and acquisition. And this is exactly opposite of what entrepreneurs do. Number one problem I hear from entrepreneurs, oh, what do you need? I need 1,000 customers. How many do you have? 0. You don't need 1,000, you need 1. All big businesses started small by definition. Big businesses didn't come out big. Have to focus narrow. If you need 10 customers, you go out on the streets and find 10 customers. It's not about trying to figure out your acquisition strategy when you're trying to get going. It's identifying the people that have that pain and go find them using your feet and your mouth, and you go find them. Form a customer advisory board from the get-go. Find 10, if you're B2C, find 10 people you can put on your customer advisory board because they have this pain that you're addressing. If you're B2B, find 3. Share with them your solution idea. If some don't like it, kick them off the board. Load up the board again. Start building the solution. Some people say, nah, not for me. Kick them off. Bring on new ones. Have a board that you can empathize with, that you understand their problem, and you can build a solution with them. And that's the way you'll have your success. So for each one of these steps, I look at why does a customer feel that they're there? What action do they take based on they're at that state? How do I measure that? And what did I do as a business? What activities did I do to get them to that state? So lots of change coming. Surf the wave to success. Feel free to reach out to me. Connect with me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me an email. It's all good. So I actually managed to save a little bit of time for questions.
Thanks so much, Brant. Fantastic presentation. So we'll take questions if anyone wants to come up to the mic to ask questions, or are there any questions from the webcast?
Or challenge me.
Challenge him,
Tell
argue with him.
Tell me where I'm wrong. Or tell me where I'm right. That's always fun, too.
Sorry. Oh, hello?
Hi.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And my name is Lydia. I'm a new entrepreneur. And all of this was fabulous, but this might be basic, but I'm still at the point of how do you move through checking out your product, doing all of this without any protection. And it's just, I've been hearing a lot about finding out what the customer wants, moving and kind of getting that, but I'm still at the basic point of how do I even move through with an idea that's not protected or I haven't done much with?
Well, it kind of depends. If you're doing internet, if you're doing software, if you're doing mobile, I don't believe in protection. I don't think it actually protects you anyway. I think that if your real advantage is your relationship with your customer. So the quicker you form a deep relationship with your customer, that's going to be your protection. Ideas are copied very quickly, 0 time, right? So it's you having to develop, getting it out there as quickly as possible and forming those relationships that's going to, and figure out what your driving force is, your shadow force is what we call it in the book, which is something that you're passionate about, that if you actually double down on that every year, when your customers catch up to you, you're sort of already at the next step. So it's sort of constantly innovating, and again, it really comes from knowing your customers deeply. If you've got a specialized algorithm, if you've got hardware that you're doing that should be protected, then I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. You go file a provisional, do a trade secret type of go-to-market. But the real question I try to ask people is, what will you do if somebody violates your patent? And really very few people actually have an answer to that. Big companies, if they're actually stealing your ideas, which it just rarely happens. Eric Ries has got a great suggestion. Take your second best idea, go find a product manager in a big company. Just try to meet that product manager. Try to give him your idea. I actually did this once. I had, LinkedIn's been struggling for a way to become an everyday app. I had a reason. I had an idea 5 or 6 years ago. I wasn't going to build it. I sent it to them. I didn't hear a word back. They're still looking for how to be an everyday app, and there's a bunch of other people that are implementing what my idea was. You can't convince people to steal your idea, actually. So, if it's what's keeping you from getting to market, then even if somebody were to steal your idea, you're sort of no worse off than you are now not putting anything in the market. You gotta, just do it is an overused phrase, but there is some truth to it. You have to get going, and you have to get it out. And when I say get it out to the market, I don't mean get it out to everybody. It's not like go do a launch. It's finding the people that you're really solving a problem for, your early adopters. They're not going to steal from you. They're going to help you build it. You're solving a problem they have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question. Thanks. This is really making me rethink some of my strategies that I had in my head. But 2 questions, if I have time. First question is, when you're talking about lean production or lean design of a particular idea, how do you stay ahead of the curve from, say, companies who are in a position to copy your idea and because of their brand name will be able to push it out in the market to a much greater audience than you? Case in point, for example, Levi's copying that.
Right, beta brands.
Data brands or
right.
cell phones. So how do you do that?
Well, hopefully there's a couple things. One is that you're sort of doing sustaining innovation if people can copy you really quickly. You're more agile. Again, your relationship with the customer, hopefully, they're not actually talking to their customer, they're just following you. So if you're actually interacting with your customers and understand them deeply, and they're actually leading you where the opportunity is, where the big opportunity is, again, I believe it's your relationship with that customer that's going to keep you ahead. It's either that, or it's some combination of it's what Steven Spear, he wrote the book called High Velocity, would call your core competency. And if you can discover sort of internally what gets you up in the morning, it's not necessarily passion, it's what you do and do well. If there's something in there that that drives you forward, and that actually is part of your product creation, then that's a competitive advantage. So in Lean, we talk about continuous improvement, right? It's having the idea of perfection. It's never achieved, but you're always striving for it. And so you're not only improving the product, you're improving the processes to create the product. And so that's a way to stay ahead.
Thanks. Second question?
Sure.
Okay, you talked about really testing out my target customer to find out if they are the dedicated ones that I'm kind of going after.
Yes.
The pitfall of that is getting too testy. Now,
Is getting what?
Getting too testy of my customers. I mean, having them, the expectation to fill them out, like lengthy questionnaires and all that. I mean, I know all my girlfriends who became too testy where that ended up, but whatever.
You asked that question just to be able to get in that joke, didn't you?
Well, the question mark is at the end of this sentence, which is, now, if I'm really trying to try my hypothesis, and I am trying to build up a questionnaire to go and talk to my potential customers, and I am walking a thin line between kind of forming questions which are leading questions just to prove
Yes.
that hypothesis in my head,
Yes.
versus really understanding what they need.
Yes.
So what kind of a structure? I mean, what hook do I dangle so that they bite?
Right. So So I mean, it's going to depend on who they are, but the idea is to get them to talk about themselves. So I mean, it's you get better with it over time. But I mean, it's like when you conduct an interview, or if you're being interviewed, a key strategy in a job interview is to get the interviewer to talk about themselves, and then they end the interview thinking that it was a great interview because all they did is talk about themselves. Mm-hmm. So this is the same sort of thing. So there's an old sales method called flipping the conversation, right? And so very briefly say who you are, talk about the 3 problems that you think that they have, and then ask if they have it. Either they don't have it and they tell you to go away, or they say, yeah, kind of, and you get to drill in and start figuring out whether your ideas are being validated or invalidated. So for example, I could say, hi, I'm Brant Cooper. I help startups get started. When I talk to CEOs, startup founders, I hear often that they have a hard time segmenting their market, have a hard time talking to their customers in order to figure out what problems they have and other ways of how to reach out to who their early adopters are. Do you have those problems? So what are the 3 problems you think you're solving? Flip it. Ask them and have them talk about it. And then use that as a way to try to drill deep. So I don't recommend using, survey is a tool. Maybe it helps you find people to talk to. Maybe you can use it as a high hurdle. That was just one example. When you go and have a customer development interview, you really should have 1 or 2 objectives that you're trying to achieve with that, rather than a list of 10 questions that you're trying to get through. You're trying to get to emotion. If you can get the customer to emotion, they're not lying. It's very difficult to lie about emotions, right? So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm going to save you time. I'm going to save you money. That's just like way too up there. No, it's like, we've had people, they go and they interview mothers about problems they have with their photo albums. And it's like, I feel like I'm a bad mother. My peers make me feel like I'm a bad mother if I can't produce high quality photographs of my family. That's actually pretty deep. And it's pretty amazing that somebody would admit that to a stranger that's doing an interview. Right? But so you're peppering them with ideas. If they're being quiet, you're trying to, get them talking about themselves, set a context for them. I've done a customer development interview with using an iPad while you're watching TV, and so I set the stage for it. First, I ask them how they do it, and then okay, you're at home, you've got your iPad, you're watching your favorite TV show, so you get them to imagine the context. This particular interview, it was like we had an assumption that that young women had this need for sort of this social status to be displayed among their friends around their favorite TV show. So, what would you like? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you have in this iPad app that you would use while you're watching TV? Oh, I don't know, right? Not very helpful. Well, say you could interact with the actors, or say that there was a leaderboard for people that were answering questions about the show. What if there was a way that, and then she interrupted and said, what if my name could appear on the bottom of the screen as an expert for American Idol, right? Doesn't mean I go build that feature, but I validated that assumption. So the more you talk to the customers, the better you'll get at this. You'll be able to draw these things out, this emotion, this excitement, or this feeling of insecurity, or this passion that they have.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So we're 56 seconds over. So we're
we'll
good?
take these 2 questions,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
All right, hi. I'm Jason.
Hi,
Pleasure
Jason.
to meet you. Brant, fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I'm wondering how you feel this lean startup model might apply to really creative sort of individuals like Jay-Z, Lady Gaga, Eminem, like people who are discovered, models, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. We did interview some people. It didn't really make it into the book, but we did interview some people that are using sort of similar techniques to find new talent. So rather than sort of, again, getting away from this, I can pick a winner attitude, which is sort of the VC model. It's also the big, the management model inside of large companies. They're the internal visionaries. Oh yeah, I like this idea, so we're going to do it. We're not going to do this idea. But actually, again, using data, running tests to see who the audience is responding to. There was actually an article in Forbes written about, we had an interview with a guy, and who was it? It was, Beastie Boys. Started out as a punk band.
Yes.
And so they actually did a pivot, right?
They did.
They did a pivot based upon reactions from the audience when they started doing this rapping stuff. So that's an idea that, big artists can actually make big moves based upon listening to their customers. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
No, I actually feel like the creatives do implement what you're talking about. I just think they do it subconsciously or unconsciously, and it's not very clearly done.
Right.
But I'm sure they're taking in feedback and seeing who rejects their songs and who likes their songs and why. And I think they eventually create what you've outlined.
Yeah, I think it's kind of harder with the big music production companies where they're investing tons of money, but I think it's similar. Like in products, you don't really want to spend marketing dollars until your product is so successful that it's putting more people into the top of your funnel without you spending a dime, right?
Exactly.
So that's the other big thing that entrepreneurs say, oh, I need buzz. No, your product has to create buzz. Marketing is actually to amplify the buzz that your product is creating. And so I'm sure it's the same thing in the music industry. If you spent $10 million on a crappy artist, it's still going to be, it's not going to fly.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I think that these ideas actually aren't new. It's a lexicon around it that really Eric Ries has put a lexicon so we can talk about all of this stuff. But some of the examples of these minimum viable products that are in the book go back to the 90s. And so I'm sure you're right. Artists have been doing this sort of thing. Entrepreneurs have been doing this kind of thing. But the great thing is that we can now teach it, and also that there's ways to instrument your product and use online tools in order to actually measure your progress towards accomplishing these things.
Fantastic perspective. Thank you.
I think you said Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, and Thomas Edison weren't visionaries. I'd like to ask who you think are today's visionaries, and a more playful way of asking the question, how do we become billionaire visionaries?
I just told you how to become the visionary. And actually what I did is I played a trick on you, because actually those guys are visionaries, but I redefined what visionary was. So each of those guys did not start out with the concept that actually made them successful. Steve Jobs had no idea that he was actually going to disrupt the music industry. Jeff Bezos had no idea when he was selling books online that he was going to completely disrupt the publishing industry. So the point is, I think those guys are visionaries, but then I define visionaries as not people that had an idea and then went and built it and committed to it, and they actually let the market eventually provide them opportunities, and they relentlessly pursued it. There's no greater story of relentless pursuit than Steve Jobs. And his driving force was this marriage of artistry and technology. And it served him wrong a bunch of times. So who actually thinks the iPhone is disruptive or sustaining? Who thinks the iPhone was sustaining? I think the iPhone was sustaining. What was disruptive? The App Store. The App Store is what changed everything. In San Diego, we had Qualcomm there. So we had a bunch of wireless startup satellites that were wiped out in one day because of the App Store, literally. Steve Jobs opposed opening the App Store up to developers. Steve Jobs' genius was not only his this marriage of technology and artistry, but it was that he hired brilliant people. John Ives was really the visionary of the iPhone, right? Steve Jobs gets credit for Pixar, but he was pretty hands-off Pixar. It was John Lasseter at Pixar, was the genius. And so it's true all through these product lines. And yes, he was involved, and yes, he was passionate, and he had this driving force, and I think he was brilliant. Yes, he's a visionary, but only if you accept my definition of visionary. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Brant. That
You're
was
welcome.
a fantastic presentation. And
you.
anyone who didn't get enough, Brant will be at Grow Talks tomorrow at the DMZ.